What I'm about to tell you took place in my hometown about 10 years ago. I'm an adult now, and over the years I've tried to move on with life as normal, but largely because of the circumstances surrounding what happened, it's something that'll always stay with me in the back of my mind and my deepest thoughts. On the day of the incident, everything started out normal. I woke up and got ready for school as per usual and walked to the local bakery to meet up with a friend before heading to class. The day seemed to fly by. I was supposed to have netball training after school, but the weather was looking like a storm was about to roll in, so our coach decided to call it off. One of my friends asked if I wanted to spend the afternoon at her house instead, but I knew her mum didn't really like driving in storms and I didn't want anything to be a hassle, so I politely declined and started making my way home. It wasn't a far walk to my house from the school. Some days it felt like a drag, but both my parents worked late, so apart from getting a lift, it was usually my only option. When I got home, I did what I always do and grabbed a snack from the fridge before heading upstairs to my room. When I opened my door, I noticed a yellow sticky note had been placed on my bed. Without much thought or hesitation, I went and picked it up. Upon reading it, my heart froze and a dull, gut-wrenching feeling washed over me. The note had written on it, "I'm in your house." I stared at it for a while before starting to rationalize what I should do next. Knowing my dad has a rather twisted sense of humour at times, I figured I'll go downstairs to the phone and give him a ring to ask about it. As I turn the corner at the bottom of the stairs and look towards the hallway phone, I immediately see another sticky note had been placed on it. This truly horrified me because I'd passed the phone when I got home and there wasn't a note on it then. With every voice in my head screaming "don't do it," I nervously approached the phone like I was expecting someone to jump out. I pulled the note off, making sure to keep looking around me at all times. The note read, "I know you're alone." In what can only be described as a pure rush of adrenaline, I didn't even think at the moment or wait a second. I just took off running for the front door. Our house is pretty big and I still distinctly remember a feeling in my stomach like being on a roller coaster while passing each room as I expected someone to jump out. When I got to the door, to my complete horror, I realized someone had locked it and taken the key from where it usually hangs. Still in a panic, I start to scream and cry for help, banging on the door as loudly as I could, trying to get someone's attention. I screamed and made a commotion for what felt like a minute before a strong, eerie feeling washed over me that someone was standing behind me. When I turned around, no one was there. My heart was racing and pounding so loudly in my chest that I could hear every beat as clear as day. Again, without much thought except feeling like I'm in survival mode, I started making my way to the kitchen for a knife or something I could use as protection. I wasn't running this time though, because the kitchen was on the opposite side of the living room and I didn't want whoever was in the house to spring out on me. When I reached the kitchen though, I noticed straight away a few things look out of place to me, like some pans and a rolling pin that were in the sink are no longer there. I made a dash for the knife drawer to see every knife was missing and a sticky note had been placed there. I didn't have to pick it up because I could clearly see it read, "You're mine now." This gave me an overwhelming feeling of fear, like the end was near. I started to cry and gasp. I could feel my legs and hands trembling while staring across at the entrance to the living room, just waiting for someone to turn the corner. With all the emotions happening in my mind racing, I started making my way to the bedroom. I checked each entrance both sides carefully before entering to make sure no one was waiting for me. When I got near the bottom of the stairs, I started hearing loud steps coming from the upstairs hallway, like someone was speed walking in my direction. Horrified, I sprinted to the back door and started screaming and prying on the door. After prying and banging on the door for a little bit, I knew deep down it wasn't going to open or budge, as it too had been locked, and thinking quickly on my feet, I grabbed a dog statue my mum had placed near the entrance and smashed open the small window opposite the door. I let out a blood-curdling scream for help as I started to climb out the window, trying to avoid cutting myself on the sharp bits of glass. It was around this time I heard the sound of sirens approaching in the distance, and before I knew it, police were pulling up outside my house. I had fell down into the garden outside my window and sprinted to the officers who had noticed me and were already on their way over. They tried asking me questions, but in the state of panic and adrenaline, I couldn't form a full sentence and just yelled, "Someone is trying to get me and they're inside." One officer escorted me to the safety of his patrol car while the other officer did a full sweep of the house inside and out. It must have been a good 10-15 minutes or so before the officer returned after hearing him go room to room. I was starting to calm down more by then, and an ambulance had arrived in case I went into shock. They were asking me questions along with the other police officer. I was trying to do the best I could to explain in detail what had happened when the approaching officer who had just swept the house noticed a sticky note on the back of my shirt. He pulled it off and showed it to me with a cold look on his face. The note read, "I was this close until I heard the sirens." Although I was now in the safe hands of the police, I felt lightheaded and terrified that whoever it was literally standing right behind me the moment before the police arrived. The ordeal went on into the late hours of the night. My parents arrived shortly after the officer had revealed the note stuck to my back, and there was a lot of questioning going on, as well as my father furiously asking how the culprit had seemingly slipped out and vanished without a trace. My family, as well as myself, were really on edge for weeks after the incident, and it wasn't long before our house was on the market and we'd moved to a different town. I did require some therapy for a short time after, but with a change of location and an increase of home security, I was much more comfortable. My therapist told me all wounds gradually heal in time, and that largely seemed to be the case, especially as I got older, but deep down this will always be in the back of my mind, especially on those days I find myself home alone.